What's going on, guys? It's Greg here. Forgive me about the darkness. The sun is setting now, so you know, it's a little dark outside, and my phone doesn't have a light on it. You know, it doesn't work. So I just wanted to do number 4 of the SHTF scenario series. And in this scenario, I'm going to talk about a pandemic, because I think it's something that, you know, we could potentially see. You know, obviously it's one of the things that I believe is, you know, more likely than any other SHTF scenario. It's probably, in my opinion, the top 5 most likely things to cause SHTF is a pandemic. You know, it doesn't have to be a crazy pandemic like Ebola or smallpox, you know, like everybody thinks, something like that. It could be a really bad flu season, or some type of, you know, bird flu, an avian flu, you know, like a H1N1, like there was, you know, almost 10 years ago. There was the H1N1, and they had people, you know, getting mandatory vaccinations. So it could be something like that, you know, a bird flu, swine flu. You know, there's so many different bird flus out there in the world today. There's also SARS, there's MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. You know, there's all kinds of bugs out there, and they're constantly evolving and changing, because that's what viruses do, and that's what bacteria does. They adapt. You know, viruses, they constantly adapt. They, you know, they make themselves more survivable. Bacteria, they grow thicker cell walls, so they're more resistant. You know, we're talking about like, what is that stuff called? MRSA. You know, MRSA is methicillin resistant, some kind of bacteria that's basically resistant to the strongest antibiotic is MRSA. Anybody who works in the healthcare field will know what that is. You know, MRSA is basically a bacteria that, you know, it can't be killed by antibiotics, so it's very dangerous. And it's commonly caught. You know, people get it in hospitals in close proximities. That's where it's usually located. But there could be something like that. You know, some type of pandemic. There could be some type of protozoa, like malaria, or some kind of thing that's transmitted through mosquitoes. You know, not too long ago, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, there was the what was that called, the Zika virus, you know, something like that. So, you know, it's always good to be prepared for a pandemic and have some precautions for a pandemic. So, you know, my question to you guys is, you know, have you thought about what you would do to deal with a pandemic situation, a pandemic SHTF that arises from a pandemic? You know, what would you do if there was a pandemic in this country? You know, how would you prepare yourself for that? How would you, you know, deal with that? You know, have you been preparing for it? And you know, what are your preps? You know, you don't have to get too detailed. You know, you don't have to compromise your security, but just curious what kind of preps you guys have out there. You know, I've kind of thought about, you know, the pandemic thing, but I haven't really gotten too much into like the medical stuff. You know, I have a basic, you know, Israeli gas mask, and I have, you know, gloves, nitrile gloves and stuff like that. But I don't really, you know, have like antibiotics or fish antibiotics or anything like that. So I'm just curious what everybody else is doing out there. So yeah, I think a pandemic is definitely something to prepare for, and you know, it's definitely something that's very likely. You know, and that's basically it for this scenario. So think about what you would do in a pandemic and how you'd prepare for that. Alright guys, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. God bless.